All right, it is time for a film goals update, check-in type of thing. Hey everyone, it is Shannon, and I'm super excited to be here today and to share with you this video. In this video, I am going to be going through the last set of monster movies that I watched in the first quarter of 2024. One of my big goals for 2024 is simply to watch more movies that I haven't seen before. And for the first quarter, I challenged myself to watch 10 new films each of monster movies, dance movies, and newly added world cinema to Canopy, which is a streaming service. And I normally talked about those films in my week in film videos, which I did up and like here and there, but I think I'm going to switch things up and now talk about films sort of like in groupings of like different of the genres or the groupings that I'm putting of these different categories. I think that makes a little bit more sense. And I also took an inadvertent break from doing videos, so I actually now have a set of monster movies to talk about. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about monster movies today, or what I was intending to watch, what I chose thinking that they were monster movies. So I'll have to ask myself, was this actually a monster movie for each of the films? I should remember to do that. I didn't write that down, but I'll try and remember to do that. Okay, so let's take a look. I was at 7 out of 10 films seen, and then I watched Monster Run. Oh, that doesn't have the title on it. Okay, Monster Run. Do we like this title? Not title, poster. That one's good. The people are bigger in this one. Okay, let's go with this one. Monster Run. So this is from 2020. It is a film from China. It is based on a book. Did I write the book name down? Oh, I did. Based on the novel Monster by A. Lee Martinez. And I watched it on Netflix, and it's in Cantonese, or I watched it in Cantonese with English subtitles. This is an urban fantasy. So excited about that. I love urban fantasy. It's an urban fantasy title. It features a girl who can see monsters, but lives in, the mundane world or regular world where that's something that, generally speaking, people don't think exist. So she is actually institutionalized and decides to basically lie and say she doesn't see monsters to get out of there. But when she's out of there, she starts seeing monsters, and then actually comes across someone else that sees monsters as well, and finds out about there's this whole like monster like cleanup service, like sort of like a pest like what would be the word, like extermination, or maybe not extermination, might be a bit harsh, but like pest control basically. So she finds someone who works for basically pest control for monsters, and so finds out, oh, there is this whole other world in around our own world, and then more fun urban fantasy stuff, monster action adventure stuff ensues. I loved this. Oh my goodness gracious. This was a complete random pick. I just opened Netflix and typed in monster, and I picked something else first, and I'm not quite sure it had monsters in it, or it was a monster movie. It seemed more like a sci-fi thriller, so I was like, okay, this isn't working. So I stopped that and went back to Monster, and I'm like, I have never heard of this. I can't remember what the photo on Netflix looks like. I guess it didn't, on the first glance, it wasn't something that I hit right away, but I loved it so much. I love the creature design. You can get a sense of those creatures, and they really kind of creep me out, because the bigger their mouth opened, their eyes were like at the like this point of their mouth. it just really creeped me out. But I love the monster design. This is much more fun adventure kind of like sci-fi fantasy vibe kind of thing. It's not like ominous peril. Like there's threat, and there's an organization, and there's the people that you're not sure you can trust, and all of those in interpersonal dynamics, and a greater the control and power and who gets to do what and who's good at what and who has the good motivations on what they're going to do. It has all of that kind of stuff in it, which is all great. And it also has great monsters. And I really like the protagonist. I really like the person that she meets that does also see monsters. And I thought that they had a good dynamic. And I also loved all of the like art design and stuff like that. It's a lot of bright colors. You can't super tell from that one. Is the other one? Oh, not even that one either. But I love the costuming and the especially that lady. Yeah, she's got some good costumes. And like the creature design and the world, and it's very bright and just over the top. It does, you do have to leap a little bit in terms of like, do you feel like this could actually happen? Do you need to be able to believe that? There were some things that felt very like like really like is that what you just have to take things at their word in terms of like how the system works and how the world works and how the monsters work and that kind of stuff, and even the different monsters and things like these special effects I thought were actually really cool in terms of like how things like faded into this or how you could access this. And if you're going to be a stickler on the logic of all of the different things, I mean, I'm not. Like if it makes sense and nobody like overtly says something that contradicts, but I'm not there to like pick at those cracks. I'm like, this is a cool world. I love the creatures. I love the story. I love the design of everything. And I'm curious about what's going to happen next. And I'm rooting for the protagonist. So for me, that's about as much as I need for that kind of thing, for this kind of story. And it had ticked all the boxes. I am so surprised I have never heard of this. I am so surprised I've never heard anyone talk about this. I'm so surprised that Netflix didn't recommend this to me. I definitely gave it the double thumbs up on this one because I definitely want to watch more movies like this. And I'm curious to read the book. I actually thought maybe it was based on a manga because of like the creature design and stuff like that, but the author is from Texas, so I don't think so. I don't think it's not a manga, it's a novel. So yeah, but that's sort of how it felt to me. It felt like a manga come to life, and I was so in. So it was a huge win. I'm really, really happy that I watched it, really happy that I took a chance. And who would have thought just typing in monster into Netflix would have ended up having landing me with such a movie that I enjoyed so much. It was really, really fun. Next up, I watched Pet Semetary Bloodlines. Monster Run was definitely a monster movie. I'm gonna have to think about this one. Not sure. So I watched Pet Semetary Bloodlines. This is from 2023. It was on my most anticipated films of the year for 2023. I think at that point it was simply like Untitled Pet Semetary Sequel. And I might have put it on that list because Pam Grier is in it, and I really enjoyed a Pam Grier film that I watched last year, and so I think that's how it got on my radar. But Pam Grier's a supporting role. We also have in supporting roles Henry Thomas, who is from, of course, E.T., as well as the TV series The Haunting of Hill House, and the one that came after that, Blythe Manor, that one. And then also David Duchovny was in this. That was a huge surprise. It was filmed in Canada, so that was, I think in Quebec, so that was a surprise. I didn't recognize it. It's set in, mostly, there's a lot of wooded areas, I think. Like there's a big highway, I think. I remember from the original Pet Sematary. But it's not rural or anything, but maybe kind of, I don't know. I'm not the person to ask those kind of things. I'm a city person. So anyway, so Pet Semetary Bloodlines, this one, so many things. So this one's set, it's called Bloodlines. So that should have ticked off one thing. So it's actually set before the original Pet Sematary film. It's set in 1969, and it follows a guy who is like, I guess, early 20s, late teenager, early 20s, and it's at a time where people are being drafted. So it's not set in Canada, but it was filmed in Canada. So it's at a time where people are being drafted or coming home from the war, but he hasn't had either things happen, and he and his girlfriend are going to join, I believe, the Peace Corps, but before they can leave, things start to go a bit odd in their small town neighborhood area. Okay, so there are a couple things about this one. First, I think I have to say a bit of a disclaimer on this, because as I was watching it, I realized, okay, so this is in the Pet Semetary world or series, and I was like, wow, I'm like, it's been a long time since I've watched Pet Semetary, and I've only watched it once. I have never read the book, and as the story was unfolding, I was like, I don't know if I remember the plot of Pet Semetary. So I'm like trying to sort of piece together what this could be about, sort of like beyond what they're telling us in the film, and I'm like, I'm not sure, because I'm like, all I could think about was the Ramones song, and I'm like, that's about as much as I remember from the film, which I saw like at a sleepover when I was like 14. I'm like, and I never watched it again. I don't know. So, but I did finally figure out that this is before Pet Semetary. I don't know if the character stories line up. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know what to say about this one. I will say it had some really creepy atmosphere that was really done well. Had some impressive tension throughout. But I do feel like, and there were some character moments and dynamics that were really compelling and had a lot of tension to them that it really had going for it. But in terms of the story, I felt genuinely like I can make a joke of it that all I remember is the Ramones song, but on of the original film. But I don't think necessarily with sequels or prequels you have to know the story, but just in and of itself, sometimes I felt like there wasn't enough story given, and sometimes I felt like there was way too much story given. In particular, there was one like phone call scene that was just complete exposition. Like it was just telling the viewer. It didn't really feel like these two people talking to each other about what they're talking about. It was the film telling the viewer to clarify things so that we know what's going on, or what they think is going on at least. And I think for me that felt like a big miss, because it's a horror movie and it's a thriller horror movie, and if I know for certain what's going on, you take away some of the tension. Now, I'm not talking like when things are unveiled and the protagonist doesn't know, and through the film the protagonist starts to know things, and maybe they're true and maybe they're not true. I mean, like, we're talking like, it's like, for me, it was just very clear. This is like exposition required for the audience, blah. But I'm like, now I know. And now I don't feel like I'm curious about things because now I know. So that it sort of, I got thrown off at that point. And I actually feel like I probably would have to say maybe this isn't a monster movie. Maybe. It depends on how you feel about like where you draw the line. But it's like, I don't mind that in terms of like, it felt like it could be. I mean, Pet Semetary, that feels like it could be. I don't remember if there were any pet situations. Can't remember. Anyway, so clearly this wasn't a huge win for me. And a lot of, towards the end of the film, a lot of the film is really, really dark, and it was really hard to make out anything, like in terms of what was on the screen. There were some times where I was like, how did that person get here from there? Was this situation, like, how did this situation get resolved? What was really going on in this situation? So I did sort of end up leaving, like, feeling like I had a lot of questions like that at the end of the film or while I was watching, and then I didn't always feel like they got resolved. And now thinking about it as in a way that it's probably that it's a prequel, I feel like I understand a little bit how they wrap things up. It wasn't what I was expecting in terms of, like, I was like, oh, that's an interesting choice. And now realizing that it's a prequel, I'm like, oh, that's probably why. Because, if it's leading into a future, part of the film. That being said, as I said, haven't read the book, haven't seen the original film for a very long time. So I was sort of more treating this as like a horror movie that I'm somewhat familiar somewhat familiar with the content, and it just didn't quite work for me. Although I did think the tension was good. It had some really interesting ideas. It also, has some ideas that I think that if you're doing a film now, you're not necessarily going to use, but given that this is a prequel and part of a series, I'm like, okay, yeah, a lot of films did use sort of those dynamics or those explanations, and it's not really something done so much anymore in terms of the origin story elements of what happened. So it's just, yeah, so there are more, it had some moments, it was really cool to see some of the actors, but it didn't quite meet the mark for me. It was a little bit disappointing, but I do think part of it is the fact that I just was like, I don't remember Pet Sematary like at all. So yeah, so that wasn't a huge win for me, but I'm glad that I saw it, and that is one more monster movie scene, or I wouldn't actually say that it is a monster movie, but the intent was to watch monster movies, and I did see one more movie, and I count that as a win, but I wouldn't necessarily put it as a monster movie. It is a horror movie, but I don't know if it would be a monster movie. I would have to think about that a little bit more. Next up, we have another film that, well, actually now a film that I didn't know much about at all, and it came up, it was one of the first ones that I was thinking about when I made my list, but it ended up being, it ended up being the last one that I watched, and that was Mako. So this is from 2021. It is an Egyptian film, and I watched it on Netflix, and I watched it in Arabic with English subtitles. There were very unusual. I don't think that there were any options for the subtitles. Like, I think they automatically went on, and one of the strange things with it is when the characters spoke English, there were no subtitles. So there were only subtitles when they were speaking Arabic. So I have not encountered that before. So anyway, this one's called Mako. I was going, okay, shark movie, here we go. I didn't know anything about it. Like, honestly, anything about it. Started watching it. This one was a little tough. So first off, it starts with inspired by true events, or inspired or based on true events. And I was like, I was really taken aback. I don't think I've ever watched a shark movie. Okay, that's not true. Oh, there is that one. It's a one-word one. The Reef, about the divers. That one's based on true events. But this one, it said based on true events or inspired by true events. And I'm just like, oh gosh, I was not prepared for that. Like, I just didn't know if I wanted to watch a shark movie that was based on true events. But as I was watching the movie, I was like, I'm not sure what I'm seeing here was based on true events. Because the film follows a group of filmmakers who decide to film a sunken ship. Let's put it that way. I think how the story unfolds is actually quite good, so I don't want to say too much about the specifics. So I think I'll leave it that vague. But the thing is, like, when I did research this afterwards, I couldn't, so they're investigating a sunken ship, and it's called Mako, and there's a shark as the cover. So I'm like, okay, things are going to go bad, right? But when I was researching the film afterwards, I couldn't super clarify what were the true events. There was a sunken ship by the name of which they give in the film. That was as far as I can get. But there's no Wikipedia page for the film. And the IMDb page, the description is incorrect. Like, it says like 8 businessmen, like, decide to create a documentary film. It's like, no, it is a group of filmmakers, and it's actually a woman who's in the lead of the group, and is arguably the protagonist of the film. And there's 3 women on the team. So I'm just like, so anyway, so that made it an uncomfortable experience, because I also didn't want to look it up while I was watching. I try and resist looking up anything when I'm watching, especially for something like this, because I didn't want to get spoiled on it. So anyway, so we're following a group of filmmakers who decide to film a documentary about a sunken ship, We also know that it's called Mako, and we're also shown stuff about sharks, so we know that this is not going to go well. In terms of that, I will say for me, this is much more of a drama and much more of a survival film. And it's very much centered on the characters and the relationship and the tension. And the fact that there's a shark, for me, didn't mean too much. It felt more like it could have been easily set like as a cave-in or an avalanche, where you have a group of people, there's some kind of event or nature thing, and it turns more into a survivalist thing. And I am not a fan of survivalist films, and I generally now pretty much avoid them. I've seen a lot of them over the years. There's a lot of really good ones, and sometimes they bring up a lot of good questions, but I just find them too upsetting, so I generally don't watch them. But I'm like, I was just wanting a shark movie. And like, some of the shark stuff is cool, but like generally speaking, this doesn't feel so much like a shark movie. And I do feel really uncomfortable with not being able to find out or figure out how much of what this was saying was true. Also, there was a really interesting thread about the shipwreck that it possibly, the stories of that it gave people a sense of sadness that never left them if they visited the shipwreck, and that sort of wasn't really followed up on, like, although it's a shark movie, so maybe it could have been followed up on, but then also, like, I don't know. Anyway, so this is much more of a tense relationship drama with a survival vibe to it. I did really like the female protagonist, that's a filmmaker, very driven, but I do feel like her character gets undermined time and time again on her choices sometimes, and I do feel like there's like an undercurrent of that's not really in support of her being career driven. So, and that did not work well with me. And I did find it a little surprising that a group of filmmakers were also seasoned enough divers to do underwater photography, like just like as if it was like anything else, like no training. They just like knew a person and just went out there, and I'm like, wow, that was surprising. I'm always up for a good training sequence, or like so it's like maybe I just felt like I missed out on that. But especially because when they were shopping ideas for like the next film to do, none of the other ones, it wasn't like they were all underwater ideas. It was a lot of like just like other topics. So it wasn't like they were centered on underwater stuff. So I don't know. Anyway, so I don't know anyone who has seen this one. I have not seen too much information about it. As I said, I couldn't find much information about it or the event, or if there was an event, and it did make me realize, like, wow, no, horror movies or like tense movies or creature movies or monster movies that are based on true events is pretty much not a win for me. So I wasn't thrilled about that. But I mean, I didn't know going in, so like, how can you know, right? And that's one of the risks that I take, and I take it. I'm not going to complain about it, because I do like to watch things without knowing too much about them, because I'm interested in so many different types of films. So even if it's not what I'm expecting, doesn't mean I won't like it. But in this case, when I want a monster movie, I think I really do want a monster movie, and I don't really feel like that one hit. There's not tons of shark stuff. There is a fair amount of underwater stuff, and there is a lot of tension, and I did think there were some really great character moments, and some of the acting was really good, like just in that sort of like those sort of survivalist type situations, like that kind of like, what would you do in that situation? Who would you be? Who are you going to be? And are you going to be able to live with yourself, with the choices that you make? So that's really sort of more what it's centered on. And there is some pretty cool underwater stuff, but in terms of the shark stuff, it didn't feel like a shark movie. And I do feel with the title like Mako, like I felt a little like I wanted a bit more shark stuff. But I don't know. So anyway, let me know. Have you seen that? Have you seen Bloodlines? Pet Semetary Bloodlines? Have you seen Monster Run? Obviously, for me, out of the three, Monster Run was the one that was the big win. But although that one and Mako I didn't know anything about, they were just ones that I found on Netflix and I thought I would give a try. And that is Mako makes the 10th film for my my challenge of watching 10 new to me monster movies. So I actually hit my goal, even though not all the films were monster movies. I was always watching with the intent of them being monster movies. I think probably I'll have to, maybe in my wrap up, I'll look at how many were actually monster movies, because that one I'm not sure. Like, it was a shark movie. I did not have much success on the shark movies. I think every single shark movie I watched was not a win. Maybe I've just seen most of them. I don't know, but I did make it to 10 monster movies, so I'm really, really happy about that. I also did rewatch Meg 2, The Trench, during the first quarter, so that was a lot of fun as well. And so yeah, so that is the last set of monster movies. I will do a wrap up on the 10 that I watched and some kind of reflection or ranking or awards, or I don't know. I haven't come up with that yet, but I will look at all of them in some logical or interesting way, shape, or form. Yeah, and then I'll be looking forward to more movies to watch and more films to wrap up. I am also going to wrap up all of the remaining dance films that I saw and the newly added World Cinema 2 Canopy that I saw. So those will be on the docket in upcoming videos. And yeah, and there you go. So let me know, have you seen any of those films? Do you have a favorite monster movie? Do you have a favorite shark movie? Or maybe do you have a favorite lesser known shark movie? Because I've seen a lot of them. I do like shark movies. I don't know why. I mean, it is a bit strange, but it is also true. So there you have it. Those are at least one monster movie for you, and 2 pretty tense, good atmosphere movies that may or may not be monster movies, but you know, give them a shot. Okay, thank you so much for watching. I will be back with another video soon. Take care.